Good day, my name is Maxine Sarson, and my paper will talk about how Hiya is a guise of manipulation. So let's start. What is Hiya? Filipinos are known to be timid, soft-spoken, and respectful, especially when it comes to their elders as a sign to show respect. The concept of Hiya is the behavior for Filipinos to act accordingly in social situations to avoid embarrassing or disrespecting others and shaming others and themselves. Hiya is a state that conforms one to act accordingly to the accepted standards of social behavior, and Hiya is often translated as shame and over time has become misunderstood and has received negative implications. According to Reyes, there are two kinds of Hiya, virtue and passion. Hiya as a virtue means a kind of conscious self-control or restraint, such as making one's voice mild while angry, and a statement usually expressed is mahiya ka naman. While Hiya as a passion means shame, shyness, or embarrassment, such as when one commits a mistake or is in front of an audience, one usually hears wag kang mahiya. According to Hernandez, Hiya to us means more than shame. It means sensitivity, empathy, sympathy to others, self-respect, respect to others, protection of one and others' dignity. In other words, in the Philippine context, we Filipinos exhibit it to become good, to best live with others and to become happy, and make others not unhappy. We practice it to create harmony in the community, such as being sensitive to others, so in return they may be sensitive to us, and respecting others means they will return the respect back, while not reciprocating it can make one appear to be insensitive, disrespectful, and undignified. Hiya is seen as a good virtue such as utang na loob and pakikisama, which can both stem from the virtue. Presentation of the argument. The framework used for this paper will focus on utilitarianism, which means that everyone's happiness and interests should be considered, including your own, to promote the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. Rule utilitarianism says we ought to live by rules that in general are likely to lead to the greatest good for the greatest number. So rule utilitarianism allows us to refrain from acts that might maximize utility in the short run, and instead follow rules that will maximize utility for the majority of the time. One can see Hiya as good and bad. One can call it good when a person displays it as heightened social awareness, being able to read the room, avoid heavy situations, control their temper, and watching their words or emotions, showing empathy or sympathy and not ruining the atmosphere. According to Reyes, the idea of speaking your mind or freedom of speech is foreign in Filipino culture, because the most important thing is preserving the harmony in one's relationship with the kapwa, even if it means sacrificing one's impulse for self-assertion. Aristotle stated that the highest aim for human practical thinking is well-being or happiness, which is achieved through the use of virtues, and the highest happiness for a human being is a life of contemplation, and only they, who did the actions voluntarily with much thought and consideration, are to be entitled. According to Reyes, the underlying idea is that one should avoid hurting or insulting other people at all costs, and we can imagine how high the stakes were in the past, such as tribal times, when it came to insulting or offending another person, that it easily established itself to the virtue necessary for survival. He also mentions that it has become a collective expectation that people should have this particular virtue and sense of Hiya, and by having it leads to commendable and predictable actions that preserve harmony within the community, which results in the whole community benefiting from it. It can be seen as a virtue in the following example. Person A asks Person B if they need help, and while Person B appreciates the offer and would like to take it, out of consideration and careful deliberation, Person B does not take it as they think of the welfare of Person A and says, nakakahiya naman sayo. Another example is leaving the last piece of food. Usually everyone at the table leaves the last piece out of Hiya, and to be seen as thinking of their kapwa and not only to indulge themselves. These two examples show how being considerate to your fellow kapwa is a virtue, to not inconvenience them, and it shows how one thinks of others before themselves. Next, it can be seen as a vice when person A buys a snack for themselves and person B exclaims, "Walang hiya ka naman," implying that he should have bought the snack for them too. Or if you arrive at a party and bring no food or contribution, but continue to eat anyway and still ask to bring home something, making that person walang hiya. As mentioned above, hiya has different meanings such as having concern for others, but if one thinks of it only as an uncomfortable feeling, then this becomes the motive to abuse it. This ideology has related shame culture to social control. To break the social norm implies cutting off one's relatedness to others or kapwa. Therefore, one can use this as a shield to avoid being called out for wrongdoings and injustice. Since Filipinos highly value the smooth interpersonal relationships value, which involves a shared engagement on an equal basis with others, then it becomes clear that one must not do anything to violate that norm, and once one understands this, they can protect themselves behind it. Therefore, it coerces Filipinos to act in a certain way. One can get away with it when they know how to predict a certain outcome will happen. If they happen to know that person A is a shy and timid person, they will take advantage of person A. It is common to witness an elder person scolding a younger person for correcting them. Common remarks heard are "dami mong alam" and "mahiya ka naman," just for expressing oneself, or if it looks or sounds as if one is about to commit an act out of line or considered unacceptable behavior. In turn, barely any younger person can express themselves properly in front of elders during heated situations, especially when the elder is wrong, when the former should be careful of the words chosen to speak to the latter. Even in the generation of free speech, it is undervalued in such societies, and in order to preserve their pride, they put themselves first at the expense of other people. Other more common examples could be not speaking up when being scolded by one's parents for something one never did, or they misunderstood, in fear of ruining the relationship between both parties and the harmony in the household. Another is not defending oneself when another person is condemning one or others, for fear they will disrupt the harmony in the environment, such as a relative commenting on their appearance, and talking back will only get remarks such as "wala ka bang hiya," or "ganun ka ba magsalita sa matanda," and will reflect on one's poor character in terms of respect or the lack of discipline given by parents. In turn, the heated conversations will cause an awkwardness in the setting and will make everyone uncomfortable and result in planting resentment, which does not contribute to the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. Rule utilitarianism can be divided into two different methods, strong rule and weak rule. For today, we will be discussing strong rule. Strong rule utilitarianism states that rules cannot be broken no matter what. An example of this is that we should all agree that lying to others is wrong, because telling the truth is a universal rule that leads to more utility. Ultimately, we should develop moral codes, which is a set of secondary principles or rules based on the primary principle about maximizing well-being. So each of the rules in our moral code should be designed so that having the rule in place will promote the greatest good for the greatest number. We can develop moral codes for every level, such as personal, professional, and society as a whole should have moral codes, one of which should be the act of not exploiting others' kindness or weakness for the sake of one's personal benefit, since it does not bring happiness for the greatest good but only for oneself. If the virtue of Hiya keeps getting negative implications, then it will soon become damaging to a greater number of people than it should be beneficial, and instead of keeping the peace, it will create resentment and distrust in the society. Conclusion. Hiya needs reason and judgment so that it may not be misused to compromise the direction of society, but to serve the ultimate good, which is to live in peace, harmony, and happiness, that is having good relationship with neighbors while keeping honor, dignity, and integrity. By keeping the rule utilitarian concept in mind, we can uphold peace and overall welfare of the society without having to sacrifice one person, all while keeping the greatest number of people happy. The virtue of Hiya is a good view of one's love that makes one control or restrain selfish impulses or desires for the welfare of the kapwa, which should not be taken advantage of by those with walang hiya. Thank you for listening.